Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage on the Thursday evening edition, because today has been a day. Follow up from last night's video. I believe I found the answer to my audio problems when I'm standing behind my iPhone filming stuff, and when I start talking, the volume goes up and then back down. It was really sensitive. And I had stated a few weeks ago that, I didn't believe there was some magic switch I could throw. And then one night, I said to myself, this is an iPhone. They're supposed to think of everything, right? The people that built it, not the phone itself, or a combination thereof. So, good old Google, it turns out, and I was setting up the scenario myself. When I film, like right now, I have my speaker on. It's not muted. And I have the volume turned up all the way. So I can hear it when I hit my remote turn off and on. Because when I turn the volume down, you can't hear the beep. According to Google, and it seems to work, when you increase the volume, it increases the sensitivity of the microphone. So yesterday, as an experiment, I turned it down, the volume on my phone, so I could just barely hear the phone beep on and off when I hit my magic remote. And lo and behold, I didn't hear my voice. It almost did it one time, but for the most part, the audio, when I was behind the phone, was much better. So it's possible it was as simple as turning the volume down, and that magically adjusts the sensitivity of the microphone. So it was never a problem in this scenario where the camera's 5 feet away from me and I'm on the back side of it, I guess. But when I'm on the screen side, things go bad. So I'm going to continue to test it before I call it a complete success. This video won't be any help at all because I'm just going to talk your ear off right now. So the storm. Yesterday afternoon, when I finally saw what was predicted to happen, snow turning to rain, I looked around and everything with a roof or a cover on it in the yard already had 15 inches of wet, heavy snow on it. 15 plus. So I worked right up until dark, doing my best to try to get the snow off, like the cover I built for the boat, which is a black top with a teepee underneath it. And like a genius, somewhere in my yard, my roof rake is buried. I need to find that before I need to use it again. So anyway, I worked right up until dark. It started snowing. Went inside, had dinner. Came back down to the shop, walked through the snow. Was in the shop for less than an hour. Went back outside up to the house and my footprints were covered and everything was covered. There was already 3 or 4 inches of snow. So it was snowing hard. And I just said, I'll deal with it this morning. I was awakened early by the school system saying there was a 2-hour delay on the bus. Happens today. My son had a dentist appointment slightly after lunch, so by the time he got to school, I would have to go pick him up and take him to the dentist office. So now that I was awake, I looked out the window, looked at the forecast, and the rain was almost over. And it rained all night long. It was, well, I showed you, squishy at best. Did some minor shoveling, fired up the tractor just to pull it out of the shed to warm it up so I don't want to asphyxiate myself with the diesel smoke. And there was already so much snow in front of the blade, I couldn't even move, hardly. Fortunately, I'm chained up, so I can move. I could easily brake the tractor. 3 hours later, all you could do, I feed my way up the hills, no problem. We were just pushing massive amounts of snow off to the side. Plowing down the hills, no problem. But like down here by the big garage, all I could do was take a foot at a time and let it go into the V of the scoop of the blade, the V, and push it all the way to the snowbank. You go to lift it up to stack it, and it just stops the tractor, and it'll either break something or stall the engine. So what a mess. But the sun was coming out. It was forecasted to be mid 40 degrees, so we went to the dentist. I had to swing by my mother's house to make sure she was all set. Swing by my brother's house to do a little bit of shoveling over there on the way home. Just now scraped my driveway for another half an hour. But on to the good news. It's going to freeze up solid tonight. That's why I wanted to do it. So trying to mitigate a mess tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm hoping, is just a regular day. It looks like the weather's going to moderate. We had a wicked light winter going, and now we had a little bit of winter. Enough complaining about that. I got mail today. First off, I got my new 1.625 inch and 5/8 layman's terms U-strap from JMR Benders with shipping, 50 bucks. See, it's only tragic if you don't learn from your mistakes. This one cost me 50 bucks, 2 hours of cussing, and a hole in my thumb. I got my 3 eBay wheel seals, and they almost look, it's like a truck wheel seal. Semi-trucks, you can buy different types of wheel seals, and I thought this was, I believe it's called integrated, where you install the seal, and the seal does not rotate on the hub. It rotates on itself, so if you have a bad hub that's rusty or damaged, you buy a seal like that, you push it on, and the inside of the seal stays still, the outside turns. These are not like that, but they look like it. But that's a heck of a seal. My local auto parts store, which didn't have any, they were like 29 bucks a piece. I found these 3 for 13 shipped each. That's why I bought all 3. And the one I found on Rock Auto was similar, but I had to pay shipping on that one. So I'll probably have 20 bucks in the odd seal. I'm hoping it is at least a National seal. I love that National puts the dimensions right on the package. Now, visually, these look right. This is the exact number that Strange Engineering gave me, and hopefully, soon enough, I will test fit them. I need to pull one of the hubs off to check the bracket anyway, so we'll check the wheel seal at the same time. Now on to the exciting stuff. My rear U-joint containment or drive shaft containment. What is it and why do you need it? And where did I get it? This one, now, all rear ends aren't created equal. If you remember, or go back a month or so ago, right after Thanksgiving, I think, I built myself using a Yukon through-bolt aluminum housing. I built myself a 40 spline spooled 457 ring gear, Strange ring gear that I bought a few years ago. And I paid extra for not only the 10-bolt pinion support, but the stud kit to go with it. And I was going to build something like this for my orange ex-Pro Stock turned early Pro Mod, which I point over there. I don't know if you can see it hanging on the wall, the picture. So every time I point at a race car, it's usually over there. I'd made one for that. I'd actually made it out of drive shaft loops, which is acceptable. It just says in the Top Sportsman rules that the front 12-inch and the rear 6 inches of the drive shaft has to be covered. So I'm always shopping for these, and they come in different designs. I like this design because, like we learned last week when I lowered the rear end all the way 15 inches down in the car to get the wheels and tires off, that I'm going to have to disconnect the drive shaft on a regular basis. So in this case, I have just 4 5/16 bolts that I can pop off, slide this up the drive shaft, disconnect the rear U-joint, and this should be able to stay on the rear end. It's only a couple inches wide, so I believe I have clearance for that. I might have clearance for the whole thing, but I can't get the U-joint unbolted, so you gotta pop this up, slide it up the drive shaft. The ones I've seen that were manufactured, oh, one more thought. If you have, for instance, a Strange Ultra case, you have 12 bolts here. You need to buy the bracket for that. If you have just a normal 9-inch Ford with just the 5 3/8 bolts, this would still work, or you can buy one with just 5 bolts, but this has the 3/8 and the 7/16 bolts alternating. So the ones that are advertised, I've been looking at weld-up kits. The difficult part, of course, is I wanted a ring type. The one I made out of a drive shaft loop was okay, but it wouldn't hold all the exploding parts, which is your goal, one of the goals. So, shopping, I saw some 4130 chrome moly ones that weren't powder coated, and they seem pretty reasonable at $250. They go from that price range. If you want to add, it's pretty reasonable, like $25 for powder coating, you can. From that particular company, I saw those on Racing Junk. And all your chassis companies sell you a version of this, you know, upwards of $500. All out of 4130 chrome moly. So one Saturday morning, a couple weeks ago, I decided I was just going to go ahead and buy one. And just for kicks, I Googled 9-inch Ford Driveshaft Containment. And this company, who, let me pause and get you their name, because otherwise I'll promise to do it at the end of the video and forget. So stand by. Racing in the Dirt, LLC, out of Cleveland, Wisconsin. These are made for sprint cars. Well, they're made for anything, but they build sprint car parts. Apparently, this was $165 in aluminum. Powder coated bracket, $165. I couldn't order it fast enough. They have a 4131 that's powder coated for a $195, I believe. And I double checked in the rule book. It just says the rear 6 inches has to be covered. And it does not specify the material. I mean, my transmission shield is made out of aluminum, and it's probably far more dangerous. Aluminum of the same thickness, so I believe that's 1/4 inch. I don't know where I would get myself this much aluminum pipe that is, it's got to be 6 inches, 7 inches. That in itself, I guarantee you, if I tried to buy that, unless I knew somebody that had a chunk, which I don't currently, that alone would be most of my $165. Understand they buy in bulk and they can bust it apart, but I don't know where I'd get such a piece, and I don't have any way to roll that. So that's what it is and how much it costs, but why do you need it? When I bought my orange car, the gentleman that sold it to me had lost most of his right arm in a 10-second Chevelle with stock floors. The drive shaft came through and ate his arm. So that is not hearsay or some story that I've heard. It's one of the selling points of the car. He says, hey, that car has a front drive shaft containment. It has a drive shaft tunnel in it. Now, we'll get to that. I'm going to build one for the car. And the front 12 inches of the drive shaft, you build a tunnel for it, just like this. It's removable out of the car. Getting the drive shaft out of the car is going to be an act of God, because you got to disconnect the front and the back and then get it up out of there. So that's just the way it is. Hey, sometimes the more stuff you add, the harder things are to work on. I'll try to make it as streamlined as possible. And my front containment device will be this size at the opening. It's actually oval. It's down there all rusty. I'll dig it out someday. But it's going to fan out, so the drive shaft, I'm going to have to drop it quite a ways, or just if I have that much travel. If it was further down the drive shaft, I mean, it's fixed on the transmission, but the rear end goes up and down, so you got to have movement for that. This goes with the rear end, so there's no need to have extra clearance. You just need your yoke to fit inside there. I read, this is probably 7 or 8 years ago now, that there was a bad accident in a brand new car. A woman driver, doesn't matter what, she happened to be a lady, doesn't matter what gender she is. It's just, in this case, you could look up the story yourself. I don't know her name. This is when Charlotte drag strip just opened. For some reason, the safety crew was not on the ball, and her car was stopped on the top end. Some friends of hers in a golf cart actually drove out to check on her, and the drive shaft, this is a tube chassis car, brand new, with tin work and everything. The drive shaft came up through, and her arm was down. I'm going to stop there because it gets pretty gory. You can find the story for yourself, but nope, not going to happen. I don't know how many thousands and thousands. I built my first tube chassis car in the 80s, and the kit car, the drag car, tube chassis kit car was all the rage. And there's thousands and thousands and thousands of them out there, and they have a front loop like you saw me bend up out of 1 inch. The chassis typically forms a back one, and you've got rolled aluminum, 32 thousandths probably. There's not even a spec on that. That's all it, and the driver's strapped in and bolted down in an aluminum seat or plastic seat, right next to this killer. You know what I mean? And what drive shaft are people most likely to choose? A steel one. And not just any steel one. They're going to go down to their local truck repair shop that builds drive shafts for combines and everything else and get some MIG welded mild steel shaft and put it in their 1,000 horsepower car and sit next to it while they're strapped in. They're not going to call up a drag race chassis shop and buy an SFI chrome moly shaft. They're not going to build their own chrome moly shaft like I'm going to. They're going to buy, they don't care. It's like blinders. You know what I'm saying? Ostrich approach. Put your head in the sand. I'm here to tell you, and this is not popular. People probably shut the video off when I start talking about safety every time. Aluminum shaft is somewhat safer. They claim it'll break into chunks. I've never broken an aluminum one. I've broken a steel one and got lucky. Just street car. Blew it up through the floor a little bit, but no big deal. And carbon fiber being the safest, but everybody watches Street Outlaws, right? If you were paying attention, Ryan Martin down in Texas street racing, the way his drive shaft containment was built on the front, you look inside the car with the camera mounted on the dash, you can see the U-joint going around. And it's just thin, his is probably titanium, sheet metal, for the first 6 or 8 inches, and the first loop is back here. There's nothing keeping this from just opening up like a, you know, it's gonna blossom when the U-joint and yoke blew up, which is what happened. He had his face shield open. I suppose he nicked off near his eye, but didn't hurt anything. Went through the roof, went through the rocker panels. And that car is no joke. That's a professional built car. If you go back and watch, he's got a YouTube channel that they reconstructed it. Jeff Lutz actually reconstructed it. And you look at most of them now, they put a second loop right at the front, and that's the way mine's gonna be. And there'll be another way to mount it back here probably, but the front will not open up like a flower. Now the rear. What's the rear gonna do for you? A few things. It's the reason why it's spec'd out in fast cars is one, well, there's no one I'm gonna list, I'm not even gonna number them. 3 basic reasons why you need one in no particular order. When the rear drive shaft, a U-joint explodes or the yoke comes apart, if for some reason it starts whipping around in there and you're going, pick a speed, 150, 200 plus, 100 even. 100 miles an hour is enough to do it when you put a piece of your U-joint and yoke through your rear tire or tires. You're gonna have a situation. So you're trying to prevent that. 2, you're trying to prevent throwing parts at all these people standing on the starting line or fans in the stands. It's a high-stressed device. Things can go wrong. You don't want parts chucking out. And 3rd, you're sitting next to it. It's gonna start whipping around depending on where it breaks, so the more you can contain it. So in my car, for instance, I'm going to have, it'll be 2 loops in my removable front containment system. The chassis, you saw me put the uprights in, actually makes another loop, if you will, and then I'm gonna have this on the back of the drive shaft. So, and I'm gonna run a steel drive shaft. I'm gonna make myself a 3.5 inch probably chrome moly shaft right here on my bench. I'm not afraid of it. I've got it contained. If I can find aluminum or a carbon fiber one someday or right off the bat, I don't know. But I have no immediate plans to not run anything but a steel shaft. And it's not a money thing. I have it contained. I feel okay with it. So in the future, who knows? I haven't got that far. But right now, I plan on running a 3.5 inch steel drive shaft. I was checking critical speeds on drive shaft. I made quite a few 3-inch shafts, but when you get up in the 8,000-9,000 RPM range, which is possible with an LS motor, you reach critical speed on a 3-inch shaft. Critical speed, and you can look up the chart for yourself, is when things go bad. It's like the date on your bread. It's expired. All right, that's a wrap on this quick Thursday night video. Tomorrow's Friday, one of my favorite days of the week. I'm hoping for nothing but sunshine and rainbows. I hope you get the same. Catch you later.